Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Ransomware is not going away, so protect yourself with cyber insurer-endorsed solutions. Today's event is produced by Actual Tech Media and brought to you by HPE. So thank you, HPE, for joining us today, and thank you to all of our attendees who are on today's live event. We've got a great event lined up for you today. We want this to be a really educational event, so we encourage you to use the questions box there in the GoToWebinar control panel. We'll be doing a live Q&A session at the end of the event, so make sure you get your questions in early. We also have an Amazon $300 gift card that we'll be announcing the winner of on the live event today at the very end of the Q&A session. If you're watching this event on demand, I'm sorry, the drawing has already occurred. Prize terms and conditions can be found at events.actualtechmedia.com. And if you'd like to give your gift card away to charity, we would love to help you do that as well. And with that, I'm excited to hand it over to Mr. Malcolm Ferguson, Chief Technologist at HPE. Take it away, Malcolm.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you all for joining today. We decided to put this material together out of a recent announcement of the Marsh Cyber Catalyst designation. So I'm going to kick things off with some introductions and some of the latest cyber threat trends that have been going on in the market. Again, my name is Malcolm Ferguson. I'm a Chief Technologist under the North America Hybrid IT team at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Joining me is Florence Levy, who is the Managing Director and the Cyber Practice Leader at Marsh. And she's going to go through who Marsh is and what is the Cyber Catalyst designation. And then following Florence, we have Aaron Basilius, and Aaron is the head of cyber for North America at Munich Re, and he's going to cover the importance and growth of the cyber insurance market, the value of cyber insurance and the growth and the importance of it. And then I'm going to wrap with the Hewlett Packard Enterprise security story, how we're transforming security through hardware and software solutions that were part of the Cyber Catalyst designation. So let's get started. Just this year, I think we've all seen the growth, the massive growth of ransomware attacks, for example, as well as potential security threats at the hardware level that's shipping. So security is top of mind with our customers. And I live in Texas, for example, where this summer we had 22 municipalities that were all hit with the same ransomware attack. The same attacker hit all 22 cities and towns. And all the systems that they run the town on, processing speeding tickets and paying or taxes, all those systems were down until the ransomware was met. The growth is amazing. I always now ask customers when I meet with them and speak with them, do you have a cyber insurance policy? And now it seems like 100% of the time is yes, and it saved us. I was with the state of Louisiana a few weeks ago and asked them that same question, and they said absolutely, because we were hit with the same attack that was hit by Texas this summer. And just this month, I did a query on recent ransomware attacks. Just in October, a number of hospitals have been hit. Just imagine a hospital that you rely on, an emergency room, that has to go to paper because their systems are down. They have to divert ambulances. This is serious business. Just the other day, the city of Johannesburg in Africa, the city of over 4 million people, is being held at ransom by hacker gangs. So this is changing our industry, and not just the IT industry, but governments, municipalities, hospitals, healthcare, because the increase has gone up to 118% in the ransomware attacks in 2019. So trends from the FBI. The FBI is reporting that more and more of these attacks are at the hardware and firmware level. And we're going to talk more about it, but essentially there are millions of lines of code and firmware below the operating system on a server or laptop. And as a result of these increased attacks, more and more regulatory laws are being put in place. And the attacks are getting more and more intelligent. They're starting to use machine learning and artificial intelligence, essentially automating these attacks at mass scale. So a single individual can cover a broader range globally in these attacks. They're using social engineering, and they're creating global cyber syndicates. Folks from all over the world are bonding together like a digital mafia, and they're using brute force with these ransomware attacks. And some of our customers, as I mentioned, I always ask about their ransomware, if they've been breached and their cyber insurance policies. They're telling us that often the mean time from identity to the breach can take a number of days, months, where the attacker has been in place and hiding. And they're also attacking the edge more and more. As our customers deploy more edge-based solutions, for example, HP has computers that are designed to run in factories and plants in harsh edge environments. That's another attack surface that's exposed. So customers need to be able to not just identify and protect, but once they've detected the breach, they need to be able to respond quickly and recover quickly. Because the longer they're down, the greater the cost they're going to incur, and the insurance company is not going to want to have to deal with those attacks financially. So loss of function is the new weapon. And on average, organizations, according to IDC, are planning to move 50% of their public cloud applications and data back on-prem for many reasons. Security, performance, cost is a big one. And so security is critical as they perform these refreshes. So let's go ahead and pop up the first polling question. The question is, ransomware is up what percentage in 2019?
And I know we didn't mention to the audience that there was going to be a little quiz here, but I hope you were paying attention, because this is something that Malcolm just talked about. And I'm curious to see what the results are. So ransomware is up what percentage in 2019? I'll give everyone just a few seconds to answer the poll, and let's see how good we did. All right, looks like most of the audience has responded. Thank you. Let's share the results. And what was the answer, Malcolm?
118%.
We were close. We were close. All right. Well, thank you, everyone who responded to that poll. And with that, we'll hand it over to Florence.
That's right. So, Florence, I'm going to pass it to you. Again, Florence is the cyber practice leader at Marsh, and she's going to cover who Marsh is and what the Cyber Catalyst designation is.
Great. Thank you, Malcolm. So as you can see from the slide here, spending to protect networks and intangible assets is really at an all-time high. Essentially, we're spending a lot more, but the problem continues to worsen. This is really fueled by new regulatory regimes and associated fines, the media coverage on high-profile cyber events, which seems to have incessant reporting, and shareholder scrutiny. CISO budgets are skyrocketing. 20% of IT spend is dedicated to the overall CISO strategy. Next slide, please. So confidence in protection is decreasing. At the same time that cyber mitigation spend is increasing, be it through people, process, or technology, confidence in being able to manage those risks has decreased significantly in the last couple of years. The survey measured three major areas when considering cyber threat management confidence, and all three showed less confidence since 2017. Those areas are in understanding and measuring threats, mitigating and preventing cyber attacks, and responding to cyber attacks. Next slide, please. Technology and insurance are merging. Cyber risk is distinct from cybersecurity. Security is the investment, and technology, controls, and people. Security is stopping the cyber events. Cyber risk is managing those cyber events. That's why it's not one or the other. Technology and cyber insurance should complement each other. Cyber risk mitigation addresses the frequency, as you can see on the left side of this chart, but cyber insurance addresses the severity, meant to protect you from catastrophic loss. These two work in conjunction with each other to form an overall cyber strategy, and it's really the confluence of the technical and business strategies. Next slide, please. So what are the insurable cyber risks? Coverage really falls into two buckets. That's third-party liability and first-party costs, which are your own costs to recover from a cyber event. Most people have an understanding of loss on the third-party side. In cyber policies, it's generally designed to protect your firm from liability arising from a variety of cyber events. The most commonly cited one is for privacy liability, which is the disclosure of sensitive, confidential information of others. Scrutiny is at an all-time high with the regulatory regime, as mentioned previously, particularly with GDPR going into effect in Europe and the CCPA, California Consumer Protection Act, which will be effective 1/1/2020. Now moving on to the first party loss, business interruption. Business interruption is the interruption or suspension of computer systems that results in the loss of income, extra expense, and forensic expenses to value the loss. As Malcolm mentioned previously, the increase in ransomware events is really a great sort of highlight of where those costs can be. From a business income standpoint, what was your income in a similar period in previous years? It usually will cover a period of restoration. So anything in this time period, typically we see 180 days, and that's actually extended from 90 days as of the event. Waiting periods also exist in the cyber insurance policies, which are average on 10 hours. Some are willing to operate more like traditional property policies with a qualifying period and not a waiting period. But traditional business interruption and traditional insurance policies has waiting periods more like 24 hours. So from a cyber standalone standpoint, there's a lot less of a waiting period for the policy to be triggered. It used to only be triggered from a malicious act directed at your system, but now it also includes system errors or programming errors, and an unintentional or unplanned outage triggers coverage. So from a cyber extortion standpoint, which I'll just call ransomware here, this obviously is what we're focusing on today. And as we've seen, companies are racking up millions in losses due to ransomware attacks that then shut down and paralyze companies. There's no right answer as to whether or not if you pay, and the insurers are creating profiles on a lot of these bad actors, if you will. So oftentimes they know a lot more than we do and can help us, can help you in managing that cyber threat, determining the credibility of it. And then of course, if there is a cyber event that happens after the ransomware, the cyber insurance will kick in. Small and mid-sized businesses may not be able to absorb the same pain from a lengthy disruption that some of these companies are experiencing. There's also some misinformation in the media stating that having cyber insurance is an incentive for ransomware attacks, but this isn't true. Carriers are paying and criminals are succeeding. Companies remain vulnerable due to gaps in technology or poor awareness of the risk, and this is where the silicon root of trust comes in. Ransomware attacks are cheap and easy to execute. Next slide, please. So here's a case study on how cyber insurance responds to ransomware events and shows the true value of it, how these losses actually pay out in real life. The top line describes a typical ransomware event, which unfortunately many of you are already familiar with, and the boxes below represent costs covered by insurance, and there are many. Insurance is not just for privacy-driven risks anymore. Once the ransomware encrypts your data and seizes your systems, disrupting all of your operations, the insurance will pay for legal counsel and computer forensic experts to try to figure out what in the world has taken place. You've got to implement contingency plans and remediation steps. The cyber insurance will also cover you for the execution of your cyber incident response plan, including extra expense for redundant facilities, and oftentimes reasonable cost to repair the systems. Customer service and invoicing might be delayed. Operations resort to manual processes like Malcolm mentioned below in the healthcare space if you're using paper files. Network remediation continues. Any revenue lost from the reduced efficiency, including extra expense of retaining additional personnel, would be covered, and forensic accounting costs due to the document loss. And then finally, potential litigation, so third-party liability from adversely affected customers and business associates. Defense costs and damages, legal costs from regulatory investigations are also covered. Next slide, please. So the state of the insurance market In 5 years since 2014, capacity has doubled for cyber, driven by non-privacy industries. The total cyber capacity is estimated around 1.8 billion. This is theoretical and doesn't take into account aggregation or other issues, but basically this is estimating the total millions of dollars that can be transferred. That being said, the largest single annual standalone cyber program is probably around 700 million, but we are definitely seeing a steady increase in clients choosing to raise their limits year over year. There are numerous ways to access capacity through the US and domestic markets, Lloyd's of London, Bermuda, even the Asian market, and reinsurance. Reinsurance capacity is interesting. We don't see many clients leveraging their captives because there doesn't seem to be cost efficiency for doing so. Costs the same with traditional risk transfer. Next slide, please. So who is Marsh? Marsh is the largest global leader in insurance broking and innovative cyber risk management solutions. We see ourselves as your cyber risk advisors and access the insurance market on your behalf. So what is the Cyber Catalyst designation? It's a first of its kind evaluation program by the cyber insurance industry that will bring clarity in the crowded cybersecurity product marketplace exclusively accessible by Marsh. There are 8 leading cyber insurers, like Munich Re, who's also participating in this webinar, who evaluated cybersecurity products and services and identified those that they considered effective in reducing cyber risk. 17 cybersecurity solutions received the Cyber Catalyst designation, which means that the insurers believe these cyber solutions have a meaningful impact on cyber risk, like ransomware or cyber extortion threats, including the HPE Silicon Root of Trust. There are potential policy enhancements for use of the Cyber Catalyst products, and it could change the way the underwriter views your risk from a variety of perspectives, from more capacity to lower deductibles or other interesting and innovative ways over the course of your cybersecurity portfolio. Marsh helps you as the insured access the best capabilities in this complex world of cybersecurity. Next slide, please. You'll see on this slide that we've listed the 17 Cyber Catalyst designees, and it's important to note that these were chosen out of 150 applicants. It was a rigorous process, yet these are the products and services that were considered to be unique and the most effective at reducing cyber risk. And with that, we can move on.
Thank you. Okay, so another polling question. How many HPE solutions were selected for the Cyber Catalyst designation?
And I brought up the poll question. Like Malcolm said, select the number of HPE solutions that were selected for Cyber Catalyst designation. Easy question, 1, 2, 3, or 4. I'll give you 5 seconds, let's say, to answer this question, and I'll share the results and we'll see how we did. All right, let's share the results. And it was a close tie between 2 and 3. Malcolm, how did we do?
2 is the answer. Aruba's policy enforcement firewall software, part of their ClearPass and Naira or Introspect technology for securing the network, and Gen 10 Silicon Root Trust. So there were 2 designations from HPE out of the 150.
Excellent.
Okay, so now up next is Aaron. Again, he is the head of cyber for North America at Munich Re, and Aaron's going to tell us about the importance and growth of the cyber insurance market.
Great, thank you. Just to give you a bit of background in terms of who Munich Re is, we are traditionally the world's largest reinsurer, and for those who don't know what reinsurance is, it's insurance that sits behind insurance companies. And in that role, traditionally what we've been able to do is help provide capacity and expertise to facilitate the business of insurance worldwide. And we also have a direct facing operation as well. And within my unit, we focus on large corporate entities, being able to work with them to come up with customized solutions that meet their insurance needs, specifically in the cyberspace. So we have a global footprint on all of the continents other than Antarctica. We have a presence. And specifically with respect to cyber, we were one of the early supporters of the cyber insurance market. I think it started probably around the dot-com bubble of the late 90s, early 2000s, and has grown since then, and now exists as a standalone line of business, and is increasingly integral to companies' insurance solutions and risk transfer philosophies. Across the group, we have 140 cyber experts, some of which are underwriters, but we have many technical experts as well that work on modeling, understanding, and staying on top of cyber risk as it evolves and grows. And at the bottom, you have the financial, our financial soundness. We bring in about $50 billion a year in premium. Next slide, please. In terms of the growth of the cyber insurance market, and when I talk about cyber insurance, talk about the specific policies dedicated to covering cyber exposures and the resulting bad things that could happen from cyber attacks or cyber incidents. And over the years, there's been a steady growth, especially over the last 10 years. As you can see from this chart, it's been strong double-digit growth year over year for the past 5 years, going from approximately 2.7 to what's estimated to be in the neighborhood of 8.5, maybe 9 billion by 2020. And the U.S. was, largely because of the regulatory environment, the U.S. was an early adopter of legislation with respect to privacy, especially, that required companies and organizations that dealt in individuals' personally identifiable private information, that there were obligations and penalties associated with that information being compromised or exposed or misused. And with that, the U.S. was an overwhelming market for growth in the early days of cyber, but that's changing. As you can see, the rest of the world is catching up and growing more quickly than the U.S. at this point. But globally, in the U.S. and outside the U.S., cyber insurance is becoming less and less of a discretionary buy and more of a necessary buy to be able to protect companies' balance sheets. Next slide, please. Florence went over a few of the different coverages and kind of what it is that you get with a cyber insurance policy. And so what this chart shows is the correlation between the bad things that can happen and the types of coverage offered. So at the bottom, you have the trigger, whether it's a malicious act related to a computer or human error or malware or some type of system failure. And by system failure, it could be, it's a very broad term, usually to describe something where someone might just press the wrong button or do something, turn something on, turn something off that would have an adverse impact on the company's data and networks. So under loss or theft of data coverage, there's a couple of things associated with that. There's kind of the first party issues. And by first party, we mean the company's own data, that what the company needs to be able to transact business. And it also will hold data on behalf of others. So loss or theft of data that can result in a direct loss to the company itself, but also can result in liability, that they're responsible for data that they were holding for others. And either that's lost or compromised or it's made public, and there may be a resulting liability. So any of those triggers could give rise to that. Privacy breach protection coverage, that focuses more on individual data, personal data, consumer data. It responds not only to the liability, but also to cover the types of costs that you need to to incur just to be able to understand what's going on and respond. And then cyber extortion cover. That's one that is particularly appropriate for today when discussing ransomware, because in a lot of cases, not all cases, but a lot of cases, ransomware is associated with a demand for Bitcoin. That's probably a best case scenario where there is a demand. In some cases, ransomware comes onto a network, and there may not be a demand. Business interruption coverage. If there's something that makes it difficult to either access data or access your networks, in some cases, systems are compromised to the degree that administrators try to get on and they look at a blank screen. Other times, there's kind of hints and signs that things might not be operating optimally. In either situation, the insurance is designed to respond so that whatever impact that has on the business bottom line, the insurance is designed to respond. Things like DDoS attacks, malware, human error, again, system failure, malicious acts. Next slide, please. And then these are, whereas the first slide was kind of the more traditional approach to cyber, cyber as a threat is starting to find its way, not just related to kind of digital data and digital operations, but it's starting to have an impact on everything that companies and organizations are involved in. So as a result, cyber policies are having to adapt and respond to, whereas the cyber threat exists and has existed for a long time, the perils, what can go wrong, is starting to, people are starting to realize that more can go wrong as a result of a cyber attack, and we've seen it in various examples around the world. So there's property damage, where as a result of some incident on either involving data or the systems, that there is actually a physical loss associated with it. And cyber policies are increasingly picking that up. Product liability, if there's a cyber incident that in some way compromises the product itself, whether be they data platforms or technology companies and their software that they provide, or even traditional companies where things like refrigerators and consumer devices are becoming increasingly connected and relying on data and the sharing of data in order to operate. And then finally, the idea behind having insurance is to protect your company's bottom line, and part of that means protecting their reputation. So if there is a major incident, even if your networks don't go down, but there might be a highly public loss of data, the insurance is also designed to respond there if there's their reputational cover that goes beyond the traditional business interruption cover. Next slide, please. And then as far as ransomware goes, there's a number of different variants of ransomware. Two of the most prominent ones within the last couple of years were WannaCry and NotPetya. And you can see in this slide that the estimated financial impact in various industries was in the hundreds of millions. Manufacturing might have been in the multiple billions. And one thing to note on that is that these were not necessarily targeted attacks at companies. In some of these cases, it was just collateral damage, where an attack was introduced into an ecosystem or an environment and spread from there and impacted companies that were never the intended target. And in some cases, it represented an existential threat to those companies. And in some cases, they had cyber insurance, where they didn't. At least of the several examples that I'm aware of, they now have cyber insurance, or they're actively in the market looking for it. Next slide, we can go to the last slide. One more. And then some of the key areas of consideration that we look at in underwriting. We look at to see what a company's profile is, where it is, how big it is, geography. All of those things can have an impact on how much of a target it is, and also can represent kind of a culture around cybersecurity, and also the legislation that would be applicable. In the U.S., it's more highly regulated than some other parts of the world, and so we would expect to take that into account. We look at a company's the type of data that they have, things like incident histories. Do they have a history of loss? And which is not necessarily a disqualifying factor, but we would expect to see that that they've learned and have grown from that. And a few of these other areas of inquiries are things we look at. And really what we want to do is understand, does a company understand its risk? And are they aware of their business, where what risks there are, and are they actively seeking to remediate those risks? And they may not have all the answers yet, but what we hope to see is that they are actively working to become more secure. Insurance is just one part of a company's overall cybersecurity plan and posture. And the HPE's root of trust technology is a tool that, in our view, does enhance a company's overall security posture. It's something where, in the future, where kind of the integrity of the hardware itself is likely to be more and more of an issue. We think HPE is in many ways ahead of the curve, trying to build that security into the hardware itself.
All right, we've got a poll question here. I'm going to pop up this question, and it says, according to some estimates, how big will the global cyber insurance market be in 2020? The options here range from 5.6 to 8.6 billion. I'll give you, let's say, 5 seconds to answer this one, and let's see what the results are. All right, a lot of good responses coming in. Thank you, everyone. Let me go ahead and share the results with you. And the results are 39% said 8.6 billion. Malcolm, what was the answer?
8.6. It's an estimate, of course, but the point is, as Aaron mentioned, it's just growing dramatically. And often you have to get burned. These customers are getting burned because they don't have insurance in place for cyber. And that's why it's growing so much, is the attacks are generating the insurance in the market. So now I'm going to wrap with a section on how HPE is transforming security. We're going to start with kind of from the bottom up there on the right of how at the lower physical level, our silicon root of trust is unique in the fact that it is embedded into our own ASICs that our systems are managed by. So ILO is essentially a computer inside the computer that controls, for example, the firmware load of the system, ensuring that it's secure. We have an indelible fingerprint on that ASIC that validates it's an HPE designed firmware that matches with our silicon. And then as you move up the stack, the Zero Trust Fabric, that is the Aruba policy enforcement firewall software to protect the packets over the network between the systems, tracking if there's a malicious user on the network based on a machine learning event of normal traffic. We also have our WASL software, which is our workload-aware security software for Linux. So at the operating system level, we can secure the stack that is application aware. And then all this data, the most important thing is all this data from our systems goes up into a system called InfoSight. So now we're doing AI and machine learning on all our customers globally in our big security database so that we can help protect customers from each other. So again, there were 2 HPE solutions selected for the Cyber Catalyst designation. Again, to me, it's a go-to list for companies to help better protect themselves from a cyber attack or a ransomware attack. It's a combination of hardware and software and consulting companies that can come in and help harden the environment if they have been breached. So our Gen 10 portfolio is vast. We have, again, edge solutions, rack, tower, hyper-converged, composable converged systems, all powered by our Generation 10 platform. And our company actually just recently did a large IT refresh for our private clouds, all powered by Gen 10. And our Aruba policy enforcement firewall, 1 million licenses worldwide that are out there for this software to protect the network once you're on the network, the physical and the wireless networks. So we have 1.3 million Gen 10 servers that we've shipped in the past 2 years. So it's a very large install base. And many of those systems are now moving into our InfoSight system, to where now we're not just protecting at the edge, but now the protection is going into our protection-aware database. A little bit about Silicon Rooted Trust, a little bit more about it and what it is. Again, we started shipping our Gen 10 2 years ago with this new intellectual property, complementing our ILO ASICs that are in the system. And it's not just protecting against firmware when the server comes up, but what we're doing unique is we are watching the firmware, and you can do it up to daily checks to validate that the firmware has not been compromised. And then if there is a compromise, we can restore the firmware with a golden image to help the customer recover rapidly from any downtime. And we've done independent validations of this technology, penetration testing, et cetera. And the companies that we've hired, like Infusion Points, have told us that we are generations ahead of other companies they've done testing against. And as a result of our lead in this Silicon Rooted Trust, we've picked up higher levels of certification for our hardware. For example, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, where more and more governments are coming to us and selecting our products solely because of this unique intellectual property we have with security at the hardware level. So kind of on the left side, you have what some of our competitors are calling their root of trust. But the problem with the competitors is they're often using a standard BMC or a third-party piece of hardware or processor they have to rely on, versus our ILOs are not third-party. It's HPE designed silicon, and we are validating up to 4 million lines of firmware code. So firmware, again, is the new attack surface. Think of Silicon Rooted Trust as antivirus for your firmware to not only securely boot the firmware and operating system, but checking regularly, again, daily if needed, so that if there is a breach, we can recover from a golden image and restore, versus just a check at post. Our competitors don't have that constant monitoring once the system's up and running. And this is the most exciting thing, is last January, we opened up our InfoSight system to the ProLiant family, actually going back to our 8th generation servers. But the 10th generation, again, the 1.3 million 10th generation servers out there now can send that Silicon Rooted Trust telemetry data into our large support database. So this database runs in our data centers, and now we have, for example, the full stack of the customer's telemetry data, not just their storage performance and utilization, and their compute performance and utilization, and even their VMware environment data, so that we can do cross-stack analytics and tell them how to better use their workloads for better performance and application performance. But now, if a customer's firmware does get compromised and we do a recovery, we can notify globally all the other customers we have with a similar fingerprint or setup and help prevent them real time. So now Silicon Rooted Trust becomes a global security system. And this is a real customer, and there's actually a 60 Minutes episode. I think it was August 28th. But if you just Google 60 Minutes ransomware, you'll see the link and you can watch this. But Hancock Regional Hospital was hit with a ransomware virus called SamSam that came in through email. And it got in, and they were able to steal the hospital's critical data, and then they encrypted 80% of their servers that were running the applications for the hospital. Then the hospital got a ransom request. The FBI was notified, and investigation started. Unfortunately, the FBI couldn't do anything. They couldn't unencrypt the servers, and they didn't know where the data was hosted until the ransoms paid. So the hospital had to go to paper. No computer applications that they could use. They had to go to paper, which is very scary for a hospital that large. They had to divert ambulances, cancel, procedures. We talked about loss of reputation, right? If this had happened to my local hospital, I would probably pick another hospital, being worried about not being protected. But the HPE servers, actually, out of their 80%, they had 20% of our Gen 10 servers. They were not impacted by the ransomware. The Bitcoin had to be paid in 48 hours so they can get the hospital back up and running. They couldn't stay down like that anymore. The non-HPE servers that did not have Silicon Root of Trust were down for greater than 2 months. So it was a big impact on their reputation and business. And as a result, the cyber insurance company replaced the servers that were infected with HPE Gen 10. On the network is equally as important. We have many hospitals that are using, for example, our Aruba wireless technology. They also are protecting the network with ClearPass. Now, ClearPass can actually work with third-party wireless radios, so you don't have to actually have our hardware. But ClearPass is the system that gets you on the network, the physical and wireless network. And we bought a company that was named Naira that was doing AI and machine learning on the network. So, for example, if a source IP address were to hit a server that had never hit it before, the Introspect software can actually real-time block access to that device. So that is how we're using our policy enforcement firewall software to protect the network. And I also want to mention that I mentioned we just wrapped up a large IT refresh of our own for our own company's business systems and private clouds. And we used our own point next or consulting experts around cyber and security to harden the environment. So we have engineers, folks that customers and partners can hire to secure the architecture, that come up with a design, do vulnerability analysis, platform hardening. So all of these are services that HPE can provide in addition to complementing with hardware like Silicon Root of Trust in Gen 10, because that's just one piece of the puzzle, as mentioned. You need to take in the full stack and the full environment end to end, applications all the way down to the base hardware. So our last polling question here: how many shipped Gen 10 ProLiant servers are secured out there with Silicon Root of Trust? How many have we shipped in the past 2 years that are out in the field?
I brought up the poll question for everyone out there in the audience. The answers are 500,000, 1 million, or 1.3 million. Looks like we've got some responses coming in. Thank you. All right, let me share the results of this one with you. And overwhelmingly, they said 1.3 million. Malcolm, how'd we do?
That's it. You guys got it. Great job. Any other questions that have come in that we need to answer?
Yes, sir. We do have some questions here, some actually really good questions that have come in from the audience. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up another poll question that says, what additional information would you like on the HPE solution? I'll just leave that up here while we do some Q&A. So the first question, Malcolm, maybe you can answer this one that came in. Ken is asking, how do you protect the golden image that would be used if a server was corrupted or compromised?
Right. That golden image is secured via the ILO Silicon Root of Trust. So it is protected from being accessed due to our own encryption technology that we have in the ILO, embedded in the ILO.
Okay, nice. Another question here. There's a number of questions about cyber insurance. Ken is also asking, is cyber insurance available for IT product and service providers, or is it really only targeting the customers of the service provider or the clients?
It's available for any industry, any size, any type of company. That's the easy answer.
Okay, excellent. Here's a question from David. He's asking, how much ransomware insurance is enough, and by what metrics should that be calculated?
So I'll take that one first. This is Florence. At Marsh, we have a cyber risk framework that we go by, which is understanding, measuring, and then managing your cyber risk. So we have a variety of analytic tools that will help model a variety of different types of risks, both privacy, business interruption, and ransomware type events. And we take a lot of information, both public and with other outside vendors that we have contracts with, but things like the size of your company, the industry you're in, publicly available loss data on things like NotPetya and other sensationalized or some of those ransomware events that happen that we all read about in the media.
Okay, excellent. Let's see, another question here about contingency plans. Morgan is asking, what's your recommendation for the contingency plan review? How often should it be reviewed, and what are the important items that need to be reviewed and updated? Any suggestions on that, either Florence or Aaron?
I can take that one. I'd be happy to take that one. So in terms of contingency planning, what we look for is that it happens on a regular basis. We understand that every company is different. Every company has different needs and different organizations, different structures. What we are, as insurance companies, as underwriters, what we're looking to understand is that there is a good awareness of the risk. And so contingency planning should not always focus on the same thing. For example, some companies might focus on a DDoS attack or some other potential corruption of critical data that they need to operate. What we would expect is that there is a regular assessment of what are the risks, and that starts with what your business is and understanding what do you rely on, what data do you rely on, what operations do you rely on, what systems do you rely on, and that you're really taking account of that, and then on the back of that, running through tests and running through scenarios on a regular basis. For example, if there are data centers that you rely on, and that if you have a backup data center, is there a plan, and is there testing going on where data center is the first one is taken down and then you brought up on the second one? Things like that, where there is not only a theoretical understanding, but actual kind of wargaming going on, and actual scenario testing that happens. That is always in our view, the sign of a healthy company when it comes to cybersecurity, and that they're taking lessons learned, making improvements. No one can be perfect. And at some point, there's a diminishing return on your cybersecurity preparation. But do you have to do it every week? No. Every year, I think every year would be the minimum required. But maybe you stagger that throughout the year in terms of testing different vulnerabilities or different areas of the business to make sure you're staying on top of your resiliency planning.
One more point on that one that applies is, companies not only are building strong cyber departments, we have one at HPE, for example, that our IT team has to respond to and report to, but they also are enforcing what are called RPOs and RTOs, a recovery point objective and a recovery time objective. It's that being able to recover quickly from downtime is so important. One of our products, for example, our hyperconverged product, SimpliVity, one of the reasons we bought it is because the company is they have integrated backup like no other hyperconverged product into the product directly. And we have customers, for example, that were hit with WannaCry. Their virtual machines were on these hyperconverged systems. And because our hyperconverged can back up so fast, so often, and recover very quickly, they were able to do up to 10-minute backups, full backups of all their virtual machines all the time. So now they could go back to 10-minute sections until they got the clean copy of all the applications and recover at the operating system level. So another example of leveraging technology to meet those goals of recovery time objective required by cyber.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great insight there. Thank you both. Some good feedback coming in. Dan said that they recently purchased cyber insurance, and they did a lot of research, and they felt it was the best decision they made for their company. Another question here. There's a few questions around the Cyber Catalyst designation. I think this kind of sums them up, and that is, what impact could the Cyber Catalyst designation have on your cyber insurance portfolio? Who wants to take that one?
I'd be happy to respond to that one. In Marsh, in coming up with the Cyber Catalyst designation, it's an attempt and kind of the first steps, at least within the insurance industry. It is unique to take insurance policies and the coverages that are offered in the insurance market and start to actively partner with security providers, those that, whether it be hardware, software, whether it be consulting, to be able to look and see what's on the market and apply it to cyber insurance and partner, so that at the end of the day, our companies are more secure, that insureds are more secure, and to hopefully, one, identify those solutions and tools that are of actual value. And in HPE and being selected for two of its solutions, they're solutions that the carriers participating looked at and said, yes, we think that there is value in that. That by incorporating Silicon Root of Trust and the HPE Aruba policy enforcement, that companies will be fundamentally better risks. And then on the back of that, the idea is that as they become better risks, they'll be able to get more competitive terms, broader coverages, better pricing, and be able to access potentially even larger limits as well on the open market, because they are viewed as better risks and having a good handle on their own cyber risk and understanding it, and by then partnering with these Cyber Catalyst designees. Okay, great insight. Another question that came in, Chris is asking, what's the minimum to get started? And I think he's referring to cyber insurance. Florence or Aaron, either one of you want to take that? I mean, how do you, if for a small company, perhaps, how do they kind of get started with that?
Well, it's definitely imperative to use a broker, and obviously my preference is to access Marsh as your broker. Like I said, we are the world's largest insurance broker, have capabilities of doing business in pretty much every country in the world, and we've provided, I think via the chat box, a way to access us on our cyber landing page, and we'd be happy to work with you and your company to get started on filling out an assessment and approaching the marketplace.
Excellent. Let's see, Malcolm, another question for you. How do I know if my servers have Silicon Root of Trust?
It just has to be a Gen 10 server with our ILO 5 ASIC inside of it. So anything that's been the Gen 10 designation with ILO 5 that's been shipping actually for the past 2 years, it's built in, it's included, you're ready to go. And you can manage it under the ILO management console, controlling, for example, how often you verify your firmware checks. And then, of course, as I mentioned, all those servers are supported in our InfoSight support system, which is basically where we're starting to automate support. Our goal with InfoSight is to eliminate level 1, level 2 support, where if there is an issue, we want to be calling you. You don't call us. But if you do call us, you go straight to a level 3 engineer. And then, of course, on hpe.com there, you can select, there's a contact link there to contact our sales as well as drill into the full Gen 10 portfolio.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, it looks like we've handled just about every question that came in here. We got lots of great questions, lots of great feedback as well. I learned a lot on the event. I know the audience did too by their feedback. Before we go, I want to announce the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card. These prizes are awarded by Actual Tech Media, and prize terms and conditions can be found at events.actualtechmedia.com. The winner of that gift card is Jack Glenn of Virginia. Congratulations, Jack Glenn. And I want to, again, thank our audience for joining us on the event today. And I also want to thank Malcolm of HPE, Florence of Marsh, and Aaron of Munich RE. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone, for joining.
And for more information, I've pasted in some URLs, 3 URLs in the chat box right there. You can just click on those, and you'll also receive an email with additional information after the event. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and have a great day.